Hello and welcome back to Tachikawa. You are listening to Sakamichi Nights. My name is Matthew Boynton and I am joined as always by Daniel Bellamy. How are you today, Daniel?
I'm great. Doing really well.
It's beautiful weather at the moment.
Yep.
If this is what Japanese summer was like, I would be all into it. It's kind of warm and sunny during the day, but cool enough for a light jacket in the evening. This is just about perfect.
Right. It's not going to stay like this. You're aware.
I am aware of that, sadly. Right. And it was in the backdrop, against the backdrop of this beautiful weather, that yesterday I performed one of my summer rituals and made my annual pilgrimage to the Mount Takao Beer Garden. There are kind of three big things that signify summer for me in Tokyo.
Right.
There's the mountain, there's the boat, and there's the dancing.
Okay. Would you like me to figure out what they are?
Why don't you try it? Yeah.
The mountain is Takao Beer Mount. That's a gimme.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
The dancing is the Koenji Bonodori Festival.
The Awadori, that's right.
Awadori
Yes.
Festival. Yep. And the boat is the other one.
The boat.
The boat. Every year do you do the Tokyo Bay cruise?
I try to, yes, or at least I used to, back when it was going on. So for those of you who haven't tried it, it's a ferry that goes out from Hamamatsucho around the bay and back up. It's about 2 hours cruise, and it costs 1,500 yen or less if you're wearing a yukata, but not less if you're wearing a jinbei, as I found out to my chagrin one year.
Yeah.
And it is all you can drink for the entire 2 hours while you're on the boat. So we're usually there really enjoying the scenery on that one.
Yeah, just taking it all in. What happens if you don't do one of those things? Summer doesn't start.
Well, it's not a real summer, I suppose.
Right.
I will say, though, that means the past few summers have not been real summers because I haven't been doing any of them. For a start,
well, that's good to know.
Awadori has been cancelled for the last few years.
Right.
So good to welcome it back this year. And also the boat people have decided to ruin the experience by cancelling the all-you-can-drink portion of it.
Oh, for real?
So you can still buy a ticket. It's maybe 2,500 yen now for the ticket, but you have to pay for your drinks while you're on the boat.
That is not as good a deal.
No, you can get an all-you-can-drink deal, but it also includes food, and it costs about 6,000 yen.
Nope.
No, thank you.
Don't want it.
You have ruined that experience. What are the big summer signifiers for you here in Tokyo?
Just not being able to go outside without a hat, a bucket hat. It's kind of that's the one, really.
You and the band Ocean Color Scene are as one on that one.
Yeah, I don't get that reference, but sure. But recently, at some point, I was like, you know what, skin cancer probably bad. I should take better care of my skin. I don't know if that's an old man thing or what, but I started basically wearing a bucket hat.
Skin is the largest organ in your body, so you got to take care of it.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of my feeling now. I'm into. We're both cyclists, as listeners might know. I've been buying long sleeve summer cycling wear. Like I have two super lightweight but long sleeve UV blocking cycling jerseys, and I now have a set of like summer weight bib tights for cycling as well.
It's going to be quite the sight to see you in just the bib tights and the arm protectors.
Yeah, we can make that happen anytime.
That's going to be an exciting podcast recording. How's your week been this week? Do you have any hilarious anecdotes that you want to share with us?
I'm so glad you asked. Highs and lows this week. I think I mentioned to you a while ago, I don't remember exactly how long ago this was, but let's say a month ago, perhaps 2 months ago, we had a rainy day. A customer of ours came in and stood at the counter, and then over the time he was drinking, it was raining a lot over the time he was drinking, and then it stopped and it dried up. And at some point he walked out, and when I came to wipe the counter where he was standing, I found a very nice umbrella hanging right in the spot where he was. And normally I'll pop outside and see if I can spot the person and give it back to them, or they might be on the way back. But I think because it was so dry, he probably just didn't even notice. So he's a regular, like I know who he is and I talk to him sometimes, but he doesn't come in very often. I think he comes in about once a month, which means there's a chance that I could miss him, not see him. So anyway, I don't know if you remember, but I said to you, hey, this nice umbrella here belongs to this dude. So if he comes back in, make sure to give it back to him.
I do not remember that at all, no.
Okay, well, I did say that to you. But anyway, I've been waiting and waiting for him to come in. I was worried he would come in on a Friday or Saturday and I would miss him and he wouldn't get the umbrella back. And normally I wouldn't care. Plastic umbrella, doesn't matter, right? But it's a pretty nice one. And so anyway, I was like, this is going to be a real great moment. Like, I'm going to reunite this man with what is obviously a prized possession of his. No one splashes out big money on an umbrella unless they really appreciate umbrellas. So finally, yesterday, he came in. And I was so happy to see him. I haven't seen him since that day, obviously. And he came in, and I remembered, and I immediately grabbed the umbrella, and I held it aloft, ready to see his eyes light up to be reunited
Tuscan
with
Raider
this.
style,
Yeah.
shaking it over your head.
I held it up there, out to him, and he looked at me like I was fucking insane. Mm-hmm. He was like, "What is this? What are you doing?
Not his umbrella.
What's going on?" Turns out, not his umbrella at all. So anyway, we got a pretty nice umbrella here.
If you want it, come and get it. All you have to do is say, "Hey, I think I left my really nice
This
umbrella."
Like a nice one, not a cheap one.
Do you want to describe the umbrella at all?
I feel like that's a bad idea. Someone's just going to come. Oh man, I miss it. It could have been a red herring. I could have been like, oh, it's got like tiny crimson penguins on it.
Why don't you describe two umbrellas? And then people have to come in and choose which one is the truth and which one is the lie.
Sounding like a lot of work now.
One of these umbrellas always tells the truth.
I think the easier solution is it's just my umbrella now.
Yeah, I guess so. When you go on the boat, if you need protecting from the rain, you've got a nice umbrella now.
I was so excited to reunite him with this umbrella. And I was really worried that he was going to come in and it would be busy and I would just forget. And then he would leave and I'd be like, oh man, I'm not going to see him again for another month or 2 months. So when I saw him and I remembered, I was like, already patting myself on the back. And then from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows.
You went from patting yourself on the back to punching yourself in the dick. Yeah, it's a real roller coaster.
There, yeah.
It's a real roller coaster ride here at Sakamichi. Well, if you did leave a very fancy umbrella here, we've got it. All you have to do is come in and describe it to us, and we will return it to you gladly.
We have quite a few umbrellas here, in fact.
We have a real collection. I think this is something that anyone who runs a restaurant or a bar in Japan has to deal with eventually. You just start bundling them up or handing them out to customers.
I've done that,
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the umbrella update for the week. Why don't we move on to a brewery update? There's been quite a lot going on in the brewery over the past couple of weeks. We'll start by saying that all three fermentation tanks are full at the moment. We've got 3 pretty exciting beers coming up. Probably next week, 2 of them will be ready to package. We have a new Happy Hoppy Pee-Pee.
Yep.
Hoppy pseudo pills made with the Quake yeast and a new kind of hops this time to give it a bit more of a tropical character. That one we made together with our friends at Chelas. You want to spill some beans on that beer?
Chelas is coming up on their first anniversary. I believe their anniversary event is actually going to be on Saturday, July 1st. So if you're in the Giugalca area, that's a great place to stop by. For those who don't know, Chelas is craft beer, specifically California craft beer and tacos. And the food is great. The beers are great. Great atmosphere. It's a good place to go and hang out. So they wanted a beer for their anniversary, and we got to talking about what we could maybe make. They really liked Midnight Sun, which is the original Happy Hoppy Pee-Pee. So doing a variation of that, but in kind of like with almost a San Diego twist to it, which is where Renee's from. That seemed like a good idea for us and for them. So they're going to have it on tap for their anniversary, and we will put it on tap here from the same day.
A San Diego PP. One to look forward to there. In the middle tank right now, we have another beer that we worked on with some friends of ours, this time Takao Mountain House, just where I was yesterday. It's another fresh batch of Mount Crushmore, our mountain IPA. Sometimes people ask me what style of beer a mountain IPA is. To those people I say, who are you and what are you doing in my shower? But I'll explain it to you now. It's a little bit hazy and it's a little bit bitter. It's kind of halfway between your West Coast IPA and your East Coast IPA. What's in the middle? It's the mountains.
Yep.
It's the mountain IPA. And in the final tank, we have a fresh batch of another beer that people tend to like around here. That is Haze Craze. Haven't settled on a name for this batch yet, but I'm quite excited about it for a couple of reasons. One, we doubled the amount of dry hops this time. So however dry hoppy it was last time, double that. And secondly, this is our first time using cryo hops, which I'm quite excited about. So those add even more aroma and juiciness and hazy goodness to a beer. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this one comes out.
I've had a smell of this beer out of the tank. It's great. Smells great.
Smells like a very juicy and hazy IPA. Looking forward to all three of those. So that's the good news. All three tanks are full of beer. It's fermenting well, should be ready over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Now from patting ourselves on the back
to breaking our gearbox, so to speak. One of the bits of equipment that we have here that we use to make beer is called a mash tun. And that's the big tank where we mix together hot water and crushed grains to make wort. And it has these rakes inside it that spin round to make sure the mash is kind of nicely, properly mixed, homogeneous, no dry spots or cold spots or anything like that. Well, during the last brew day, those rakes completely stopped moving. They got completely seized up. I couldn't even move them by hand, which luckily we had finished mixing the grain and the water at that point, so we were mashed in properly. But it did mean that getting all the spent grain out afterwards was a bit of a trial. We did manage to get all of the wort in the tank, though, and that beer is proceeding as normal. But we actually had some people in to look at the problem that week, and it turns out that the motor is fine, the rakes are fine, but it's the gearbox, which is the interface between the motor and the rakes, which is causing the problem, and it needs to be replaced. So there is a new one coming from China, hopefully, but it won't be here until kind of the end of the month, and then we're going to have some dudes come in to take off the old one and to put on the new one, which is going to be a full day of work. So it does mean that we can't make any new beer at the moment. But luckily, all of our tanks are full, so we wouldn't have been making any new beer at the moment anyway.
It's kind of good timing. We got 3 beers in. We probably would have had a week break from brewing anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's not great, but we're working on the problem, and hopefully it will be fixed by the time we are ready to get a couple more brews in the cans.
Yeah, definitely. Last Thursday when we were taking it all apart and trying to figure out exactly where the problem was lying was a fun time. I thought it was going to take half an hour, maybe an hour tops. It ended up taking about 5. And at one point, just working on a motor normally, if it's on a table in front of you, isn't that difficult. But in a brewery, nothing is an easy to reach place. So I was standing on top of a ladder, holding this motor at full arm stretch whilst the contractor, the supplier, was removing the bolts that attached it to the gearbox. And we wanted to check, how heavy is this motor before I have to lift it off this thing. Key information. And he was having a Skype call with the motor manufacturer in China, and we got back with the information that it is either 8 kilos or 30 kilos. It's going to be one of those two. One of those two. Luckily, it turned out to be 8 kilos. So it was relatively easy to get down. But taking things apart, if they are just laid out in front of you, is fairly straightforward. But always in the brewery, it seems that the bolts are in the hardest to reach places, and things have been painted together, or nuts have got seized tight. Right. And that always causes issues when we're trying to do this kind of maintenance work.
It's also like we have some tools here, but we don't have like a complete set of tear everything apart tools.
Maybe
because
we should.
We don't. Yeah, I mean, should we though? There's a lot of stuff that we don't totally need. that it's going to be kind of a once in a blue moon type of thing. I don't know. I suppose some of it comes down to cost as well, cost and storage and things like that. But
yeah, definitely.
We were lucky to come up with the things that we need through, some things we had by chance. But it seemed like in the end we had most of what we needed to pull it apart, right?
Some things we had to improvise a little bit. But yeah, we have a reasonably stocked tool chest here. But there's always some stuff that you don't know you need until you need it. They were taking it apart and they said, okay, can we use your multimeter, please? Terribly sorry, we just don't have one of those. I don't trust myself with any kind of electrical work. It was at least it was useful to write down all of the things we needed whilst we were doing it, so I know what I need to buy the next time I go to the tool shop.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's your brewery update. Things are fine. Everything's moving forwards, but we can't make any new beer at the moment. But luckily, all the tanks are full of beer. So yeah, kind of good timing on that one. It's been a chance to do some other maintenance work on the system as well that we can't normally do when it's running. That's your brewery update. Now, we're not just here to complain about gearboxes and seized nuts. What else are we here to do on this podcast, Daniel Bellamy?
I'm just stuck on seizing nuts at this point.
Seize the
nuts. Threw that right in there. We are here to celebrate beer.
That's right. And we are here to celebrate another one of our own beers this week. Let the back slapping commence, and we'll leave the dick punching for later on. We're going to be celebrating another one of our beers this week. Let back slapping commence. It is the Dialectic Yuzu, a Berliner Weisse with yuzu juice in it. Dan, before we get into this beer, what can you tell us about Berliner Weisses or yuzu or this particular beer?
Well, we've done a series of fruited Berliner Weisses. We've done a series of them, and in fact, this is, can I spill this? This is the same recipe as One Night in Tokyo, isn't it?
Oh my goodness, we're going to get...
Can we not? Let's roll it back in. Anyway, it's the same base recipe, the Berliner Weisse recipe we've been using for the other dialectics, and changing out the fruit this time for yuzu. The idea of Berliner Weisse, it's a wheat beer, it's slightly sour, and it's generally fruited in some way.
It isn't. It's very similar to the One Night in Tokyo recipe, but it is slightly different because we use yuzu puree for that one, whereas we use yuzu juice for this one. So slightly different, but a very similar recipe. That's enough talking. Why don't we dive in and enjoy a few glasses of Dialectic Yuzu. The thing I like about the recipe for this beer is its simplicity. It's basically, in the grain, it's 50% wheat, 50% Pilsner with just a sprinkling of oats. And then we use Philly sour yeast to make the beer sour. And then after 72 hours, we add the yuzu juice. And that's it, basically. All very straightforward.
Yep.
Is it a straightforward tasting beer?
Sure, I think so. I wouldn't say that it's simple in a bad way. But I think it is. It's kind of upfront with what it's going to deliver. It's not a beer that's taking you like on a big journey of like different flavors kind of showing up as you take a sip of it. But I think it's lovely and refreshing. Certainly perfect for the season, I think. Can I ask you, is this less sour than previous versions?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
It tastes less sour to me.
Interesting.
I like sour things quite a lot, so I enjoy sour beers. And I know that Berliner Weisse are not meant to be sour on the scale of like a sour ale. But I feel like previous versions were more sour. Maybe that's just the fruit that was added and how much sourness the fruit is bringing to the party. Could be
the timing of the fruit addition as well. I did check just before we started recording, and this one, the final pH was 3.5. But I don't know, I don't have in front of me what the final pH of the other versions would be.
Right.
But I don't think it would be very different to that. Maybe 3.2, 3.3 at the lowest. Berliner Weisse isn't a super sour beer.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe this one is fractionally less sour than previous iterations. Yeah, as you said, it's really nice beer for the season, for hot days. If it's hot outside, if I've been doing something sweaty, I think my first beer, I will almost always default to a sour in this kind of weather. Especially one that is quite refreshing like this. I get, obviously there's a lot of yuzu in it, but I also get a bit of lemon. It's almost like a lemon sherbet. Right. Do you ever have those sweets when you were little? It was like a boiled lemon candy and there was sherbet inside it. And at some point you break through the membrane and all the sherbet leaks out. It's like that moment when this beer hits your tongue. So there's a kind of fizzy refreshingness and a citrusy sweetness to it as well.
I also agree. It is quite like a sherbet or like a yuzu gelato kind of thing. And I think it's... we don't talk about it much with regards to other beers, but I think this has kind of a distinctive mouthfeel. It has to do with the carbonation, I'm sure, and the amount of... they said it's oats, right? Or wheat, sorry.
The grain was half Pilsner, half wheat, and with a little bit of oats.
Right. So yeah, I think probably due to the wheat in it, maybe, or a little bit of the oats. But like, it's got a very... It's got... I would call it a soft mouthfeel, but it's got quite a lively carbonation to it. But not... Sometimes that carbonation can go too far and be like almost prickly in your mouth. But this one, I don't know how to describe it. It's like almost like a hot tub kind of sensation, right? Like they're pleasing bubbles rather than kind of like prickly bubbles. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but that's kind of
drinking a bag of needles.
It's like drinking a cup of hot tub water after the party. Is this making any sense? I feel like it has a really lovely mouthfeel that is also in some ways reminiscent. Maybe it's your point about the candy and the inner sherbet thing, but it is kind of reminiscent of an actual yuzu sherbet, both in the flavor, I think, but also in the way it feels in your mouth.
I think that the final gravity on this one was higher than it is for a lot of our IPAs, which means there was quite a lot of residual sugar left over, which can give it a full mouthfeel. But then that combined with the sparkling sharpness of the acidity is maybe what creates that interesting mouthfeel. Yeah. Whenever we drink beer on the show, we also like to try to pair it with something. We have 8 different options here, but of course we can't have the 2 most recent ones, which were...
One of them was wild card, so that's fine, but it can't be place.
All right, so let's spin the wheel and find out what we'll be pairing this beer with. Video game. All right. So what are you going to be playing as you're drinking a glass of Dialectic Yuzu? This is probably going to be a very boring answer, but I'm just going to choose the video game that I've been playing the most recently, which is the new Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom. Have you seen anything about this?
Yeah, I've seen a little clips here and there.
So it's great. I will start by saying it's a really fantastic game. They took everything that was good about Breath of the Wild and turned it up. So you've got a huge world to explore, and there's more of it. And you can create like really interesting and funky creations by joining together stuff that you find in the world. And one of the things you can do, slight spoiler alert here, is you can meld things to your weapons. So if you have a sword and you kill some monster that has a big spiky horn, then you can then meld that horn to your sword to make a better sword.
That's cool. I like that.
It's great. So it incentivizes you to kind of seek out dangerous enemies because the stuff
you
they
can
drop,
harvest them.
You can harvest their parts. Nice. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that what that is doing is similar to what we're doing here. We're melding together, as you said, the grainy, full, sweet mouthfeel of this beer with the sharp yuzu citrusy sparkliness to create a very dangerous weapon indeed. So that's why I'm choosing Tears of the Kingdom.
Excellent. We, I don't think our listener base is to the point, our followers fanatic enough where we have like a moderated wiki or anything like that. I feel like when we have had video game as the pairing option, that several times, at least, you have said, I'm going to go with the game I'm playing right now.
Yep, it's on my mind a lot. I've been playing this game recently, and that's what I'm going to choose.
Yeah, which is fine. This is a delicious beer, and I've been playing a good game. These two things go together.
I can always justify it somehow.
Yeah.
Now, have you made the mistake of listening to what I'm saying rather than thinking of your own answer now?
I do that a lot. But no, this time I didn't listen to you at all.
Good.
After you said, I'm going to name the game I'm playing right now, I went, oh yeah, this again. Okay, I can think about my answer. So I would like to drink this while playing Flower. Did you play Flower?
Yes, I did actually. I played it at your flat.
Wow.
In Shimokitsugawa.
Okay, right. Yeah. Way back then. Flower, how old is Flower? 15 years ago?
It's a while,
something like that. What's the premise? There's not really a story, but you control essentially a wind-born petal, flower petal, and you go around this world and you collect other petals, and you end up being this long kind of comet of petals, and you are bringing life back to the world, and there's not really any instruction, but you kind of pick things up just from going around the world and kind of floating around as a flower petal. It's light and it's fun. It kind of has a message if you want to read into it, but it kind of doesn't if you don't want to. So it's kind of lovely and effervescent and very enjoyable to play and get into. And I have it on good account that it's an excellent hangover game that you can just kind of sink into the sofa and fly around as a petal and get over whatever bad decisions you made the night before. But that's not what we're doing here. This would be, willfully enjoying this beer of sound mind and body and playing Flower.
So you're not saying that this is an excellent hangover beer?
Is that what I said?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Flower is an excellent hangover game.
Right.
This might also be an excellent hangover beer, though, now that I think about it. Is that something we want to recommend?
I don't think that's something we want to endorse. No.
Okay, let me back that up. There is no excellent hangover beer. You should take a shower and some Advil, have a banana, and get some sleep. Yeah, that's how I got into giving medical advice.
Thank you, Dr. Bellamy.
Yeah.
That was very illuminating. If this beer was to be a particular flower, what flower would it be?
I'm not really a flower guy, so I'm going to say chrysanthemum.
Interesting choice.
Yeah.
I'm not a flower guy either, so I'm just going to have to accept your answer.
Yeah.
Not a yuzu flower, a yuzu blossom.
No, definitely not. I mean, that would be almost too obvious.
That would be ridiculous. Very nice beer, though. Let the backslapping segment conclude here. This is, as you mentioned, it's a Berliner Weisse, which is a kind of a sour beer, a semi-sour wheat beer. But in the brewery, there are quite a few different ways of making sour beers, right? But I thought we could talk about those a little bit, and also just talk about what is sourness in a beer. So, pH. Dan, what is pH?
It is a measure of how sour something is, how acidic something is.
How acidic or how alkali something is. That's right. And basically every beer that you drink is slightly sour. Most beers, at least the ones that we make here, the finishing pH for them is in the low 4s, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, somewhere about there. The yeast, the fermentation, acidifies the beer, and so all beers are technically slightly sour. But beers that we notice as being sour tend to be maybe a full pH value below that, so somewhere in the 3s. I think lemon juice has a pH of 2 point something, right? So that's at the level where you still can just about consume it, but you're probably not going to enjoy it very much. So a high 2 to a low 3 is about the value that we would expect to get from a sour beer.
We have a pH meter,
yes.
Right? Did you put any of the yuzu juice just directly into the pH meter?
I didn't. I probably should have done that.
I'm curious.
Before adding all of it to the beer.
Because we had a little taste of the yuzu juice